In this video, we'll learn start and end date validation in LWC. So that's the one of the most commonly used scenario. That's why I picked up this topic. So let's go to our VS Code and quickly create a component. I'll create a component and give this name date validation. And now date validation component is ready. We quickly go to HTML and create a lightning card. And we'll give the title date validation. And within this card, we'll create a div with a class LDS heading around. Yep. And under this, what we're gonna do is we're gonna build two lightning date fields. So we'll say lightning input type equal to date. Then we'll say name equal to start date, and then label equal to start date. And we need a on change handler here. So whenever you change something, it should call this method. That method name we can say date handler. And we'll close this start date field. I'll copy the same field and paste it below. I'll say the name to this field and date, and here I'll change the label from start to end. I'll keep the handler as it is, and let's go to the JS file and create this method. Date handler will get called up, and what we want is we want two fields here, two property basically, start date and end date. And the point to note here is I'm giving the property name similar to the name that I have given to my name attribute, start date and end date. I'm going to use this name attribute. So whenever somebody change in the input field, it will come to as an event, and I'll say I'll deconstruct the name and value. I'll say from event.target pull the name and the value, and we're gonna update the value to a respective property. And to do that dynamically, we're gonna use the name field, and we'll say just map that value. So behind the scene, what will happen? Suppose you change in the start field, you start doing the change in the start date. Immediately date comes there, the name is the start date. So it looks like this start date, and here it will be like value. So it's other way of writing this is this dot start date equal to value. So this is the shorthand. I don't need to create two handlers separately for start date and end date. So that's what I have used the property name and the name field as same. Apart from this, I need a lightning button, and on click of this button I want to trigger the validation. I'll create a variant brand. I'll say label submit, and on click of this button I want to call submit handler, and I'll give the class here SLDS medium top SLDS margin top medium, and I close this button. And now we have to deploy this, and before deploying we have to do the change in the meta file. Let's go to the meta file and change is exposed to true, and we'll place the target as lightning app page. So let's deploy this component and see how it works. Right now for the date field, whatever the change handler I have added here, on click handler, that submit handler we haven't created here. We'll come back to this. First we'll go and place our component. Let's go to app 0 to hero. I'm in reusable component lightning page. I'll click on edit page, and I'll place the component date validation the right hand side. I hit save. I'll come back. Now you can see our date picker is coming perfectly fine and submit button is there. And now our real use case in real time is we want to trigger a validation. On click of submit, our start date should not be greater than end date. That's kind of validation we're gonna handle this now. So let's go to our VS Code, and here we're gonna first call the submit handler. So we'll create the submit handler, because on click of this button, submit button will call the submit handler, and inside this we want to handle that validation. And the validation, now I explained you, I want to validate whether my start date is greater than end date or not. Okay, so first what we'll do, I'll create a method here. I'll say this dot validate date. It will take this dot start date and this dot end date as argument. So we'll pass the argument and we'll create this method below, and here they will receive start date, end date. I want this method to be clean, that's why I'm expecting the parameter instead of using this dot start date directly here. And now here we'll write our logic. So to make sure our start date is greater than end date or start date is less than end date, we're gonna write the logic here. So we'll say return, and we are validating here the dates are correct, which means end date is greater than start date. This method will return true, otherwise it returns false. We'll say we'll call new date object, and in this object we'll pass the start date. It will return the new date, and we'll fetch the get time method here. So this method will gives us the time in the millisecond from the date of 1970 1st of January. So I'll repeat it again. The get time method gives returns the data in the millisecond, and it gives the time difference from 1st January 1970. So now what I'm gonna do, I'll say start date minus end date, and here I'll use end date. So instead of minus we have to check the greater than or less than. So I'll check if my end date is greater than start date, it returns true, otherwise it returns false. The expression basically we are executing, so it will definitely return true or false. So if it's true, it means a date is valid. If not, it should return false, which means date is invalid, which means start date is greater than end date. So here in the submit button handler, what we're gonna do, we'll check if this dot validate is there, it means everything works fine. We'll console dot log date valid, else we're gonna print an error, and we'll say we'll create a property here on the top. We'll say error property, and in this property we'll assign this dot error equal to end date, then start date, and we'll print this error message on the screen. We'll go to our HTML, and above the button we'll create a p tag, and in this p tag we're gonna print this error, but we don't want to load this p tag if error is not there. So what we're gonna do, we'll use the if true directive. I say if true error is there, then only print the error, otherwise don't print the error. And I want my error message to be in the red color, so I'll add the class error here. So SLDS also gives text colors, so I'll say SLDS text color underscore error, so it will return or give red color to this text. And here what we can do is, and clean it up a little bit. So this is for error handling, this is the button, and these are two are date field. So let's deploy and see if it works or not. So now it's deployed. Let's go and refresh the page. And now I'll go to inspect, open the console and clear the console. First I'll take the validate. I'll select 13 and 21. So start date is less than end date. If I click submit, it is printing data is valid or date is valid. And if I go start, I'll change start date to greater than end date, which means I'll select 23 here. 23 Jan is greater than 21, so it should throw an error. And as I click on submit, it say error end date cannot be greater than start date. So this is the basic single line validation we did here. So this is a reusable function you can use in your project as it is. So whenever you have to validate your start date and end date, just use this method. That's how we do the validation of date. And that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next video.